The sound of a crystal vase shattering against the marble wall echoed through the estate like a cannonball, making the foyer chandeliers vibrate. Ilara stopped at the entrance door, her hand trembling over the doorbell she didn't even need to ring, as the massive door was already wide open. Before her, a scene of brutal humiliation unfolded. An elderly woman with disheveled uniform and a face bathed in tears was being pushed out, screaming, stumbling over her own feet. "Get out of my sight, you useless old hag," Blythe screamed, a woman of stunning beauty, but with her face distorted by visceral hatred. "If I see your face here again, I'll call the police and say you stole my jewelry. I'll put you in jail, do you hear me?" The elderly woman, Miss Loretta, tried to hold on to the doorframe, her wrinkled hands trembling, sobbing convulsively. "For heaven's sake, Miss Blythe, I worked here for 30 years. I helped raise young Thaddeus. I have nowhere to go. Mr. Thaddeus would never do this to me. Mr. Thaddeus is a vegetable," Blythe screamed, her shrill voice slicing the cold morning air like a razor. "He calls no shots. I'm in charge here now, and I said out." Blythe gave a final, cruel and unnecessary shove. Miss Loretta lost her balance and fell to her knees on the rough stone sidewalk, scraping her skin. Ilara, who watched everything paralyzed, felt a tightening in her chest, an instinctive urge to run and help that woman. But her feet seemed leaded to the floor. She held her work permit against her chest so tightly that her knuckles were white, aching. She needed that job. She needed it more than the air she breathed. The image of her younger sister Jovi, moaning in pain on the narrow bed of the damp room they shared, invaded her mind. The surgery cost a fortune. Without this salary, Jovi wouldn't make it past this year. Her love for her sister was the only thing that stopped Ilara from turning back and running from that cursed place. Ilara swallowed her tears, her pride, and her fear. She stepped forward as Blythe turned, panting, smoothing her impeccable silk dress as if nothing had happened, composing her socialite mask in seconds. The mistress's eyes fell upon Ilara like two ice stones, analyzing every inch of her poverty. "Are you the replacement from the agency?" Blythe asked disdainfully, her gaze fixed on Ilara's worn shoes and simple blouse, washed so many times that the fabric was thin. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Ilara." Her voice came out low but firm, struggling not to show the dread she felt. "Excellent. At least you seem to have the health and youth to weather the storm, unlike that old carcass that was nothing but an expense." Blythe made an abrupt, impatient gesture for her to enter. "Get in now. I do not have all day. And I am warning you, here we do not tolerate theft, we do not tolerate laziness, and most importantly, we do not tolerate people who meddle where they are not called. If a single hair clip goes missing from this house, you will go straight from here to the precinct. Do you understand?" "I understand, ma'am," Ilara replied, lowering her head, feeling the weight of humiliation burn her face in the very first seconds. The estate was cold, silent, and frighteningly large. The ceiling was too high, the shadows too long. It seemed like a luxury mausoleum, lifeless, joyless, where even the air felt thin. Blythe walked quickly through the hallways, her stiletto heels clicking on the polished floor like a ticking time bomb, and Ilara followed her, trying to tread lightly to make no sound. The work is heavy. General cleaning of 2 floors, basic cooking, and most importantly, taking care of him. Blythe stopped before a double dark wood door at the end of the ground floor hallway. The air there felt heavier, stagnant, smelling of strong medicine and a closed environment. Blythe opened the door violently, without knocking, without any respect. The room was in total gloom, with heavy velvet curtains drawn, preventing any sunlight from entering. In the center, seated in a technological wheelchair full of straps and supports, was a man. Thaddeus. Even in the gloom, Ilara could see that he had handsome, strong features, but he was too thin. His skin had an unhealthy pallor. His head hung slightly to the side, his eyes were open, fixed on some point on the Persian rug, dull, expressionless. He looked like a wax statue forgotten in a corner, accumulating dust and sadness. Blythe walked up to him with the coldness of someone dealing with a broken piece of furniture that bothers the decor. "Wake up!" Blythe delivered a sharp slap to Thaddeus's face. The sound of skin hitting skin made Ilara jump. Ilara let out a muffled cry, bringing her hand to her mouth. Thaddeus's face turned with the impact, his cheek instantly reddening, but he made no sound. He merely blinked, slowly, as if in slow motion, trapped within himself, in a place where pain was already routine. "Do not be alarmed, girl. He does not feel anything." Blythe laughed, a dry, humorless sound that chilled Ilara's blood. "The accident fried his brain. He does not speak, he does not walk, he does not understand anything. He is a vegetable, a dead weight I have to carry out of Christian charity, otherwise the press will crucify me." Ilara looked at Thaddeus. There was something in those eyes. For a second, a thousandth of a second, she swore she saw a spark of pain, of humiliation, of a contained rage deep within that dark well. But it was so quick that she thought it was her own imagination projecting humanity where there was only emptiness. "Your main job is to keep this room clean and wipe his drool," Blythe continued, grabbing a tissue and rubbing the corner of Thaddeus's mouth with excessive force, almost hurting his dry lips. "He's disgusting, but he owns the house. At least until the wedding. After that we'll see which luxury nursing home he'll be better off in and stop getting in my way." Blythe threw the dirty tissue on the floor for Ilara to pick up. She turned to leave, but stopped at the door and looked at Ilara with a cruel smile. "Oh, and don't waste your time talking to him. He doesn't hear. It's like talking to this wall. Do your job, keep your mouth shut, and I'll pay your salary. If you try to play the good nurse, you'll be out on the street, just like old Loretta. Are we clear?" "Yes, ma'am," Ilara whispered, her heart aching, feeling tears sting her eyes. As soon as Blythe left, slamming the door shut, silence fell over the room. Ilara stood still, alone with that motionless man. She approached slowly, with respect, as if entering a sacred temple that had been desecrated. "Excuse me, Mr. Thaddeus," she said softly, her voice sweet and trembling. "I won't hurt you. I'm going to open the curtain a little, okay? The sun is good. Everyone needs sun." Thaddeus didn't move. Ilara went to the window and opened a crack in the curtains. A ray of light crossed the dusty room and illuminated his face. It was then that Ilara saw. A solitary tear, bright and heavy, ran down his face, marking his pale skin exactly where Blythe had struck. He felt. He heard. And he was suffering hell inside, screaming, in silence. The days that followed were a slow and silent torture. Ilara quickly learned the routine of the house, which more resembled a concentration camp disguised as a palace. Blythe woke up late, spent the day on the phone, spending fortunes, scheduling parties, choosing designer dresses, while Thaddeus remained in the same position, hour after hour, staring into nothing, only being turned on his side when Ilara moved him to prevent bedsores. But the worst wasn't the contempt or the constant yelling, it was the food. Ilara was in the kitchen preparing Blythe's lunch, thick filet mignon with Madeira sauce, mashed potatoes with black truffles, salad with imported cheeses and walnuts. The smell was delicious, intoxicating, and made Ilara's stomach rumble loudly, as she herself only ate a dry piece of bread before leaving home to save every cent. "Is Ma'am's lunch ready?" Blythe entered the kitchen, wearing a silk robe that cost more than Ilara's entire place. "Yes, ma'am. I'll serve it at the dining table." "Great." "And his food?" Ilara pointed to a small pot on the stove with a pang in her heart. "The vegetable soup, as you requested." Blythe went to the stove, lifted the lid, and wrinkled her nose as if smelling garbage. "It's too thick. Look at this. There are potato chunks. Add more water." "But, ma'am..." Ilara tried to argue carefully, holding the spoon tightly. It's already thin. It's just mashed potatoes and water. He needs protein, substance. The doctor said his muscle mass is disappearing. Are you a doctor now? Blythe cut in, her eyes sparking with fury. I said add more water. He doesn't expend energy. He sits drooling all day. If he eats too much, he'll get fat. And who will have to carry the dead weight afterward? And another thing, he doesn't chew properly. Do you want him to choke and die here in my kitchen? Add water to it now. With her heart in her throat and her hands trembling with indignation, Ilara obeyed. She turned on the faucet and diluted the soup until it became a transparent broth, almost colorless, lifeless, nutrient-free. While Blythe sat in the dining room to devour her feast with wine glasses, Ilara took the sad bowl to Thaddeus's bedroom. He was in the same position. The smell of roasted meat permeated the entire house, reaching him like an olfactory torture. Ilara saw Thaddeus's Adam's apple rise and fall. He swallowed hard. He was hungry. A desperate, chronic hunger, that hunger that aches to the bone. I'm sorry, Mr. Thaddeus, Ilara whispered, sitting in front of him with the spoon, feeling complicit in that cruelty. This is what we have for today. But I promise I'll find a way. She brought the spoon to his mouth. Thaddeus opened his mouth, docile, humiliated. He swallowed the warm liquid without complaining, but his eyes were fixed on Ilara's, pleading, moist. It was not the look of a vegetable. It was the look of a man slowly being erased. As she fed him, Blythe's cell phone rang in the next room. The door was ajar, and her voice echoed loudly, unfiltered. I know, Doctor. I know the deadline. Blythe yelled into the phone, impatient. 15 days. I can count. But he's still not cooperative. That damned family attorney still comes here to check, that meddling old man. I need him to be weak, drugged but alive to sign the power of attorney. If he dies before signing, the money goes to that distant cousin, and I'm left with nothing. I didn't take care of this cripple for 2 years, just to end up poor. Ilara stopped with the spoon in the air. Thaddeus also stopped swallowing. His eyes widened minimally, his pupils dilating with fear. Don't worry, Blythe continued, laughing, taking a sip of wine. He can barely lift his head. 2 more weeks on this water diet, and he'll sign anything just for me to stop torturing him. The bank won't block anything. Leave it to me. Ilara felt a chill run down her spine. It was not just mistreatment. It was a plan, a slow, calculated and cruel plan of murder or theft. She looked at Thaddeus's arms, exposed by the shirt sleeve she had folded. There were purple marks, small, round ones, finger marks with long nails. Pinches. Blythe pinched him. Perhaps to test if he felt it, perhaps out of pure sadism to relieve stress. Ilara set the bowl on the nightstand and, in a surge of courage she didn't know she possessed, held Thaddeus's hand. His hand was cold, bony, but his palm was wide. I heard, Mr. Thaddeus, she whispered, bringing her face close to his so no one else, not even the walls, would hear. I know you're in there. I know you understand. She wants to kill you slowly or steal everything from you, but I won't let her. I swear on my sister Jovi's life. Thaddeus didn't move. He didn't speak. But beneath Ilara's fingers she felt a pressure, light, timid. He squeezed her hand back. It was a weak, trembling, effortful squeeze, but it was the most striking confirmation she could receive. He was alive, and he was desperate. The next day, Ilara came prepared for war. She woke up an hour earlier, cooked the little rice, beans, and a generous piece of chicken she had bought with her last dollars, taking food out of her own mouth. She put everything in her old plastic lunchbox and hid it at the bottom of her bag, wrapped in a thick coat to keep it warm. The morning was tense. Blythe was electric, hysterical, yelling at decorators on the phone, organizing what seemed to be a grand engagement party for the press. "I want everything white and gold," she demanded, pacing back and forth. "Thaddeus will be there, of course. We'll put him in a discreet corner so as not to scare the guests with that look like death warmed over. But he needs to appear in the photos for the press to see that we are a happy couple and that I take very good care of my invalid fiancé. It's pure marketing." While Blythe argued about rare orchid types in the backyard garden, Ilara seized the opportunity. She ran to Thaddeus's bedroom, carefully locked the door, turning the key silently, and took the lunchbox from her bag. "Quickly, Mr. Thaddeus," she said, opening the container. The smell of homemade food, seasoned with garlic and onion, filled the sterile room with life. Thaddeus's eyes lit up in a way Ilara had never seen. It seemed as if a light had turned on inside him. Ilara began to feed him. It wasn't the thin soup. It was real food. Thaddeus tried to eat ravenously, hunger that ached to the bone, but he choked on the first spoonful. His throat muscles were weak. "Slowly, slowly," Ilara pleaded, worried, gently patting his back. "Chew well. No one will take this from you. I'm here watching the door." He ate. With difficulty at first, but then with urgency. He ate every last grain of rice. When he finished, he closed his eyes and let out a deep sigh, a hoarse sound that seemed to come from his soul, a sound of pure relief. Then he did something that shocked Ilara. He raised his hand, the hand that was supposed to be paralyzed, and touched her face. His fingers were rough, but the touch was infinitely delicate. He caressed Ilara's cheek, wiping away a tear that was streaming down it. Ilara froze, her heart pounding a mile a minute. That gesture, it wasn't the gratitude of a sick person, it was the affection of a man. There was an intentionality in that arm that didn't match the atrophy Blythe described. Suddenly, the sound of gravel being crushed outside, tires squealing at the entrance. Ilara ran to the window. Blythe's car was pulling into the garage. She had come back early, much earlier. "Oh my God!" Ilara whispered, panic taking over, chilling her stomach. The room smelled of garlic and onion. The lunchbox was empty on the bed. "She's here," Ilara said to Thaddeus, who widened his eyes in absolute terror. If she found out, Ilara would be fired, and Thaddeus would suffer physical retaliation. Ilara grabbed the lunchbox, shoved it into her bag. She ran to the bedroom bathroom, wet a small towel, and returned to Thaddeus. "Open your mouth, please, quickly." She wiped his lips, his teeth, his tongue, removing any trace of beans. She wiped hard, but carefully. "Spit here." Then she desperately opened the windows for the wind to carry away the smell, and grabbed the lavender spray bottle she used to clean the furniture, spreading it through the air like a toxic cloud of perfume. Footsteps in the hallway. Quick, furious. The sound of heels was like hammer blows. Ilara ran to the side of the bed, pretending to straighten the sheets, her heart in her throat. The door burst open. The doorknob hit the wall. Blythe stood there, her nostrils flared like those of a hunting animal scenting blood. "What is that smell?" she asked, her voice low and dangerous. "Smell?" Ilara tried to disguise it, but her voice trembled. I was cleaning with lavender, Ma'am. The room was very stuffy, smelling of mold." Blythe entered slowly, sniffing the air. She stopped in the middle of the room and inhaled deeply. "Lavender and onion," Blythe said, turning sharply to Ilara. "Were you eating in here, in his room?" "No, ma'am, I would never." "Give me your bag." Blythe extended her hand imperatively. "Ma'am, please, those are my personal belongings." "Give me the bag," Blythe yelled, advancing on Ilara and violently snatching the bag from her shoulder. Ilara closed her eyes, awaiting the end. Blythe opened the bag, turned it upside down, and threw everything onto the floor. The wallet, the old lipstick, the keys, photos of her sister, and the empty lunchbox. The transparent plastic container was still stained with bean sauce, the proof of the crime. Blythe picked up the pot, looked at Ilara, then at Thaddeus. She ran her finger along the rim of the pot, feeling the grease. Then she looked at Thaddeus's mouth. Ilara held her breath. Had she cleaned everything? Blythe approached Thaddeus, grabbed his face forcefully, squeezing his cheeks until they turned white, and sniffed his mouth. Blythe released Thaddeus's face in disgust, wiping her hand on her dress. "You're lucky, girl," Blythe hissed, disappointed not to find proof on his body. "It seems he didn't eat this filth. But the smell is here. You brought this filthy poor people's food into my house, into my fiancé's bedroom. I was hungry." Ilara lied quickly, taking the blame, lowering her head. "I ate quickly here while cleaning because I didn't want to stop working. I'm sorry." Blythe threw the empty pot forcefully at Ilara's chest. It hit her sternum and fell to the floor. "Pig. Filthy. Do you think this is your slum? Eating over the sick?" Blythe was red with rage. "You want to eat? Fine. We'll settle this now." Blythe grabbed Ilara by the arm, digging in her nails, and dragged her out of the bedroom. She locked Thaddeus's door from the outside, leaving him in darkness again. In the kitchen, Blythe was possessed. She went to a tool drawer and took out a thick chain and a heavy padlock. "You like to eat in secret? You like to bring food from outside?" Blythe went to the pantry, threaded the chain through the door handles, and locked the padlock with a dry metallic click. "The party's over." She went to the refrigerator. It was a vintage model with a horizontal handle which allowed a chain to be passed through the handle and the side grate. She locked it too. The sound of the chains clanking against the refrigerator sounded like a prison door closing. "Starting today, the rule has changed." Blythe turned to Ilara with a sadistic smile. "You are forbidden from bringing bags to work. You will be searched upon entry and exit. I will have the gate guards search you. And food, you only eat what I give you. If there's anything left on my plate, you eat it. If there's nothing left, you starve along with him. Let's see if that teaches you discipline." Ilara felt her legs weaken. Not for herself. She could endure hunger. She had been through it many times. But Thaddeus, without the extra food, he would waste away. Blythe's plan to weaken him would work. He would die or sign his own sentence in 15 days. "But ma'am, what about Mr. Thaddeus? The soup isn't enough." "Shut up," Blythe yelled, slamming her hand on the counter. "Go clean the bathrooms. Now. And if I smell garlic in this house again, you're going straight to jail for attempted poisoning of my fiancé. Get out." Ilara spent the rest of the day working mechanically, tears drying on her face before they could fall. Hunger began to set in late afternoon, her stomach aching, but the pantry was chained shut. Blythe went out to dinner with friends, leaving the house empty, cold, and without accessible food. Night fell heavily. A violent storm was brewing outside. The wind howled at the windows, and rain began to beat hard against the panes, as if trying to get in. Ilara had missed the last bus because of the extended punishment hours imposed by Blythe. She would have to sleep in the damp, small maid's quarters in the back. The house was silent except for the thunder. Ilara could not sleep. The image of Thaddeus hungry haunted her. She got up and walked silently to the main living room, guided only by the lightning. She looked towards Thaddeus's bedroom on the ground floor. The door was ajar. Strange. Blythe had locked the door. Ilara had heard the click. Ilara approached, her heart pounding against her ribs. She peeked inside. The wheelchair was there, empty. A cold shiver ran up Ilara's spine, raising the hairs on her arm. Where was he? Had Blythe taken him? Had he fallen from the chair and dragged himself away? A powerful lightning flash illuminated the living room, casting long, distorted shadows on the white walls. And there, before the enormous glass window that overlooked the storm-lashed garden, was a silhouette, a man, standing, tall, broad-shouldered. He had his back to Ilara, looking at the torrential rain. He was not leaning on anything. He was firm, upright, strong, like a warrior awaiting battle, not like the vegetable who had lain in the chair hours before. Ilara raised a hand to her mouth to stifle a scream of terror and shock. It was not a ghost. It was Thaddeus. He turned his head slowly, as if sensing her presence, his instinct sharp. Another lightning bolt struck, illuminating his face for a second. The empty gaze was gone. There was focus. There was intelligence in his dark eyes. And there was an index finger over his lips, a silent, dangerous, and desperate plea for secrecy. "Shh," he breathed, almost inaudible beneath the sound of the rain. He could walk. Before she could release the scream of terror caught in her throat, Thaddeus moved. It was not the dragging, painful movement of a sick person, but a quick, silent, predatory step. In 2 seconds, he crossed the space between the window and the archway of the room, where Ilara stood paralyzed. His hand, large and firm, covered Ilara's mouth. His scent was no longer that sad smell of medicine and abandonment. It was the smell of rain and a fury contained for too long. "Shh," he whispered very close to her ear, his voice hoarse from disuse, but deep and authoritative. "Please, Ilara, don't scream. My life depends on your silence." Ilara's eyes widened, her whole body trembling, and she nodded frantically. He slowly released her mouth, but kept his hands on her shoulders, looking into her eyes with an intensity that made her tremble more than the cold of the storm outside. You're walking," she stammered, her voice failing, tears streaming down her face from the shock. "I'm walking. I'm listening, and I see everything that woman does to us." Thaddeus quickly glanced at the top of the stairs, checking if Blythe had woken up from the thunder. "Come with me, quickly." He guided her not to the bedroom, but to the kitchen, moving in the shadows. Ilara could barely believe what she saw. The man she cleaned, turned in bed, and fed hours earlier, was now walking in front of her with a straight back, guiding her. Upon reaching the kitchen, Ilara gasped. The vintage refrigerator, the one Blythe had locked with thick chains and a padlock hours earlier, was open. The chain hung, intact, but the padlock was unlocked on the granite countertop. Beside it, a simple twisted paperclip. "How?" Ilara pointed at the padlock, jaw agape. "I had a lot of time to think and train my hands while pretending to be catatonic, staring at the ceiling." Thaddeus took a carton of milk from the refrigerator and drank directly from the spout, with the desperate thirst of someone who had crossed a desert. The milk ran down his chin, and he wiped it with the back of his hand, a gesture so virile and human that it made Ilara blush. "But why, Mr. Thaddeus? Why pretend all this time?" Ilara asked, confusion mixed with the relief of seeing him well. "She treats you like trash. She hits you, humiliates you. Why don't you get up and kick her out of here right now?" Thaddeus placed the milk on the countertop and sighed, the weight of the world falling on his broad shoulders. "Because if I get up now, without proof, I lose everything, Ilara. And worse, I'll be institutionalized in an asylum forever." He approached Ilara, leaning on the kitchen island, speaking low and fast. "The car accident 2 years ago. It wasn't an accident. The brakes were cut. I was paralyzed for 6 months. Truly, it was hell. But then sensitivity started to return. I felt my toe move. I tried to tell Blythe, happily, "Do you know what she did?" Thaddeus's eyes darkened with hatred. "The next day, she swapped my painkillers for horse tranquilizers. She started to drug me to keep me in that chair. She doesn't want a recovered husband, Ilara. She wants my signature on the power of attorney for my assets, and then my death." Ilara brought her hand to her mouth, horrified. "That woman's evil knew no bounds. I stopped swallowing the pills 3 months ago. I hide them under my tongue and spit them out after she leaves. My strength gradually returned. I do isometric exercises, contracting every muscle in my body for hours while pretending to sleep, so I don't atrophy. But I need to prove that she is embezzling money from my companies and planning my interdiction. If I reveal myself now, she'll say I'm crazy, violent, a consequence of the accident. Her lawyer already has the paperwork ready to lock me in a psychiatric clinic in Switzerland and take everything. I need to find the real dossier, the parallel accounting ledger she keeps. Suddenly, a noise upstairs, the unmistakable sound of a door slamming and heels beginning to tap in the hallway. She woke up. Thaddeus whispered, terror returning to his eyes. "She's coming to get water." He had 10 seconds, no more than that. Thaddeus gently closed the refrigerator, reattached the chain, and with impressive dexterity, as if he had trained 1,000 times in his mind, locked the padlock using the clip in seconds. "Go to your room," he ordered Ilara in an urgent whisper, pushing her lightly. "And for heaven's sake, act normally tomorrow. You are my eyes and ears now, Ilara. Don't betray me." Thaddeus ran. He really ran, on tiptoes, to his room on the ground floor. Ilara ran to the utility area. Her heart was in her throat, feeling like it would explode. She slipped under the thin covers of the maid's quarters seconds before hearing Blythe's voice shouting from upstairs, "Who's there? I heard a noise." Silence reigned, heavy. Ilara held her breath until her lungs ached. Blythe must have thought it was thunder. But that night, Ilara did not sleep. She had a secret. And now she had a mission. The next morning brought a terrifying new reality. The storm had passed, but the atmosphere in the house was one of Cold War. Blythe came downstairs with deep, dark circles under her eyes, irritated, and took it all out on Thaddeus. "Look at that idiot face," she said, drinking her black coffee, while Thaddeus was in the chair, head slumped, drooling a little. "The bank deadline is running out." 15 days, Thaddeus. In 15 days you sign or... Well, household accidents happen to invalids all the time. She turned to Ilara, who was sweeping the room with trembling hands, avoiding looking at Thaddeus so as not to give away the secret. "I changed my mind about the soup," Blythe said coldly, checking her nails. "Soup is too much work and he makes too much mess in his diaper. Starting today, it's a restricted liquid diet. Only homemade electrolyte solution and gelatin, clear liquids. He needs to be clean and thin for the life insurance exams I'm going to make him take next week." Ilara felt her blood run cold. IV fluids and gelatin. That was not a diet, it was starvation. It was torture. She wanted to kill him with weakness before the wedding, so he would not even have the strength to hold a pen, let alone resist. As soon as Blythe left for the spa, slamming the front door, Ilara rushed to the bedroom. She locked the door and knelt in front of Thaddeus, holding his hands. "She is going to starve you to death, Mr. Thaddeus," Ilara said, with tears of despair in her eyes. "IV fluids and gelatin. You will not be able to stand, let alone look for documents. You will faint." Thaddeus lifted his head, wiping the fake drool with the back of his hand, his expression serious. "I heard." He was pale. The previous night's adventure and the stress had depleted the little energy reserve he had. "I can take it. I have to take it. It is almost over." "No. You will not last without fuel," Ilara said firmly, a new determination in her voice. She lifted the hem of her uniform pants and pulled out a plastic package taped to her shin. "I brought my lunch hidden on my leg. Rice, beans, and ground beef." She opened the package. The food was mashed, but the smell was of life. "Ilara, no." Thaddeus tried to push her hand away, his eyes full of guilt. "That is your food. You are already too thin. You work all day. I just sit. I am strong. I can take it." "You need muscle to take down Blythe." Ilara opened the container and filled the spoon. "Let us make a pact. I will eat before I come, and you eat this. Nobody dies, and we win." It was a lie. Ilara did not eat before coming because she had no food at home. That was her only meal of the day, but she smiled, lying with love. Thaddeus looked at that simple woman in her faded uniform, offering her own survival to him. Something broke inside him at that moment. It was no longer just an alliance out of necessity. It was devotion. It was love being born in the mud. "I promise, Ilara," he said, his voice choked, accepting the spoon. "When this is over, I will spend the rest of my life paying you back for every grain of rice you are taking out of your mouth." He ate, and Ilara felt that, for the first time in her life, her hunger had a purpose. The days began to pass, dragging on in a cruel and painful countdown. Day 5. The routine was established. Ilara arrived, going through the humiliating search at the gatehouse. The gate guard patted down her bag, but never checked her legs or her bra, where she now hid pieces of bread and cheese. At lunchtime, while Blythe ate out or slept, Ilara rushed to the bedroom. The half-and-half division soon became a complete lie. Ilara saw Thaddeus's hunger, saw how he did silent push-ups on the dark bedroom floor, sweat dripping, trying to regain muscle mass for the final confrontation. She saw his effort and simply could not eat. "I ate a pastry on the way here, Mr. Thaddeus. I am full. You can eat everything." She lied, her stomach rumbling loudly, a hollow, painful sound she disguised by coughing or dragging a chair. Thaddeus ate, gaining color, gaining life. His shoulders seemed wider each day. Ilara, on the other hand, began to pale. Her clothes started to become loose. Day 10. Ilara was cleaning the tall windows in the living room, climbing up and down the ladder with a heavy bucket. Suddenly, the world spun. Black spots danced before her eyes. The floor seemed to rise. She had to hold onto the handrail with both hands to keep from falling. The bucket dropped, wetting the rug. Blythe, who was reading a magazine on the sofa, did not even look up to see if she was all right. "If you ruined the Persian rug, I will deduct it from your pay for the next 10 years, you clumsy oaf," the villain commented, turning the page with boredom. "Clean that up and stop pretending to be sick. Poor people love to be dramatic." Ilara took a deep breath, closing her eyes, waiting for the dizziness to pass. She had not eaten a full meal in 10 days. Everything went to Thaddeus. Her body was consuming its own vital reserves. But when she entered his bedroom later and saw that he could lift the wheelchair with one arm in an improvised exercise, she smiled weakly. It was working. He was turning into a bull. She was turning into a ghost, and it was worth it. Day 13. 2 days remained until the deadline. The tension in the house was palpable, electric. Blythe's lawyer called to say he would come Friday evening for the signing. During the engagement party, Blythe decided to move up to celebrate the miraculous recovery, a lie to sell a saintly image to the press. Thaddeus was restless in his chair when Ilara entered. "Ilara, you are trembling," he whispered, holding her wrist as she adjusted his pillow. Her wrist was too thin, fragile like a bird's. "You have not eaten anything today, have you? Not even yesterday. Do not lie to me." "I am fine, Mr. Thaddeus." She smiled, but her lips were white and dry. "Are you strong? That is what matters." "I am ready, thanks to you." He pulled her hand and kissed her palm, a gesture of adoration. "Tonight, Blythe will leave for her final wedding dress fitting. It is our only chance to open the study safe. After that, you will eat a feast, Ilara, I swear." The night of day 13 arrived. Blythe's car left, its headlights sweeping the driveway like prison searchlights. The electronic gate hummed shut. "Go!" Ilara whispered, unlocking the bedroom door with trembling hands. Thaddeus rose from the chair. After 2 weeks of fortified food, Ilara's food, and obsessive nightly exercises, he was no longer the trembling man from the storm. He moved with agility, his muscles responding, the upright posture of a man going to war. "Stay by the front door, watching," he ordered, his voice firm. "If you see her headlights, yell, anything." Thaddeus climbed the stairs to the second floor, 2 steps at a time, silent as a cat. Ilara stood in the foyer, her heart pounding erratically from adrenaline and extreme weakness. She felt cold, very cold, a symptom of advanced hypoglycemia. but kept her eyes fixed on the dark road through the window, praying. Upstairs, Thaddeus entered the study. He forced open Blythe's desk drawer with a spatula he had brought from the kitchen. Nothing. He went to the painting on the wall, removed it. The digital safe. He knew Blythe was predictable in her narcissism. He tried her birthday. Error, red light. He tried the date of his accident. Error, red light. Think, you viper, think. What matters to you? He murmured, sweat trickling down his temple. He tried tomorrow's date, the wedding date, the date she would become the legal owner of everything. Click. The green light came on, the safe door opened, inside stacks of cash, fake passports and the black notebook. The embezzlement ledger, proof that she was stealing from the company cent by cent while he was invalid, and bottles of medicine, the sedatives, proof of the poisoning. I got it, he whispered victoriously, stuffing the notebook and a bottle into the pocket of his baggy sweatpants. Downstairs, Ilara saw two headlights cut through the darkness of the road. The car was coming back, and it was fast, tires squealing. Mr. Thaddeus, she yelled, forgetting caution, her weak voice rising up the staircase with desperation. She's back, Thaddeus heard. He closed the safe, put the crooked painting back on the wall, but the sound of the gate opening was already echoing. She hadn't gone downtown. She must have forgotten something. There was no time. He ran to the study door, but heard the front door open downstairs with a bang. Ilara, why are you screaming like a madwoman? Blythe's voice was in the foyer, extremely irritated. Thaddeus was trapped upstairs. If he ran down the stairs now, he would run right into her coming up. He had no way to get back to his ground-floor bedroom and sit in his wheelchair in time. It was physically impossible. He looked around the study, absolute panic. "Ma'am!" Ilara spoke loudly downstairs, trying to block the stairs with her own fragile body. I saw a rat! A huge rat coming up the stairs! Don't come up! Stop being hysterical, you idiot! Blythe retorted, pushing Ilara aside. Ilara stumbled and fell to a sitting position. "Get out of my way! I forgot my unlimited credit card in the study." The sound of Blythe's heels began to ascend the stairs. Tap, tap, tap. Each step was a death sentence. Thaddeus heard the footsteps approaching. He was in the middle of the room. He looked at the swivel leather armchair behind the imposing desk in the study. The boss's chair. It was the only option. He threw himself into the armchair, spun it to face the door, threw his head back, opened his mouth, and let his arms fall to his sides, assuming the ragdoll position he had perfected for 2 years. He prayed he wasn't panting. His chest wanted to explode with air, but he held his breath. The study doorknob turned. The door opened. Blythe entered, furious, rummaging through her purse. "Where is that damned wallet? If I don't pay for the dress today," she grumbled, turning on the main light. Then she stopped, froze, her eyes fixed on the armchair across the desk. Thaddeus was there, sitting, motionless, drooling a little. His gaze glazed over, fixed on the ceiling, but the wheelchair was downstairs, locked in his bedroom. The silence that followed was deafening, louder than any thunder. Blythe looked at Thaddeus, then at the door, then at Thaddeus again. Her brain tried to process the physical impossibility of that scene. "What the hell?" Blythe whispered, primitive fear giving way to a cold, calculating fury. "How did he get up here, Ilara?" Blythe asked, turning to the cleaner who appeared in the doorway, panting. "Did he fly, or did he walk? Explain it to me now, or I'll call the police to take both of you away." The silence in the study was so heavy and dense it seemed to crush Ilara's lungs. Blythe stood in the middle of the room, arms crossed over her chest, red nails tapping rhythmically on her own arm. She expected an answer, and her gaze promised pain. Ilara felt cold sweat trickle down her back, soaking her uniform. Thaddeus's gaze remained fixed on the ceiling, glazed over, but she knew he was in a panic. If she didn't speak now, he would give himself up to protect her. She needed a lie. Not just any lie. A humiliating, painful, plausible lie. Something that would feed Blythe's sadistic ego and divert focus from the impossible. Ilara swallowed hard, feeling her throat scratch. She lowered her head, hunched her shoulders in a posture of total submission, and let a real tear of fear fall. "It was me, Ma'am," Ilara whispered, her voice failing. "I brought him." Blythe let out an incredulous laugh, short and dry like a bark. "You!" Blythe looked with contempt at Ilara's thin body, and then at Thaddeus. "You want me to believe that a malnourished little mouse like you, who can barely carry a bucket of water, carried a man that size up the stairs? Don't insult my intelligence." "I didn't carry him in my arms, Ma'am. I couldn't." Ilara lied quickly, her mind working a mile a minute. He had a seizure downstairs. He started groaning, struggling, seemed to be short of breath. "I was afraid he would die on my shift, and it would be my fault. I tried to calm him, but he wouldn't stop." Ilara raised her tear-filled eyes, staring at Blythe. "I thought if I moved him to a different environment, if I brought him where the smell of books is, he would calm down. The old boss really liked it here. So I dragged him." "Dragged him?" Blythe raised an eyebrow, interested in the grotesque image. "Yes, ma'am." Ilara rolled up her uniform sleeve, showing a nasty purple bruise on her forearm, which she had gotten days earlier, hitting the handrail while cleaning the stairs. "I took him out of the chair and supported him on my back. He's too heavy. We fell twice on the steps. I pulled him step by his arms. It took me almost half an hour. I dragged myself with him. Look at my arm." Ilara extended her bruised arm. Blythe looked at the bruise, then at Thaddeus's crumpled clothes, and finally smiled. The image of that maid humiliating herself, crawling up the stairs, dragging an invalid like a sack of potatoes, was exactly the kind of suffering Blythe enjoyed inflicting. "You really are a pack mule," Blythe said, shaking her head with a mix of disgust and satisfaction. "Killing yourself with effort because of a groan? How stupid. You have a calling for suffering." Blythe walked over to Thaddeus and gave him a light, humiliating tap on his forehead. Plaff. "And you useless thing, did you come to stroll in the study? Did you come to see where I'm going to sign away everything that was yours to foreign investors?" Thaddeus didn't blink. More drool trickled down. His performance was Oscar-worthy, but Ilara saw his hand, hidden beside his thigh, tremble with hatred. "Get him out of here! Now!" Blythe ordered, going to the table to retrieve the forgotten credit card. "Take him to the bedroom and lock the door. I don't want to see his face until tomorrow's party. And Ilara?" "Yes, ma'am?" Ilara replied, already moving to get Thaddeus, putting his arm around her neck. "For your stupid initiative of bringing him here without permission and probably having scratched all my noble hardwood floor by dragging him." Blythe smiled cruelly, putting the card in her purse. "Your salary for this month is confiscated, to cover the damage to the staircase's varnish." Ilara's world stopped. The sound faded. Confiscated. The surgery money. The money for Jovi's medicine, which would run out tomorrow. Without that money, her sister would go into septic shock. Ilara released Thaddeus into the armchair and, in an impulse of desperation, threw herself to her knees at Blythe's feet. "No, ma'am, please," Ilara pleaded, grabbing the hem of Blythe's dress. "For God's sake, my sister, she needs her medicine tomorrow. It's a matter of life or death. I worked all month. I did overtime. I cleaned everything. Don't take my salary." Blythe looked down at Ilara's hands on her dress with absolute disgust. She pulled the fabric hard, freeing herself. "Do not touch me with those dirty hands," Blythe screamed. "You should have thought about your sick little sister before playing nurse and ruining my house. This is for you to learn your place. Be grateful I'm not firing you and throwing you out right now." Blythe grabbed her purse and left the study, stepping over Ilara's legs without even looking back. "Get out of my sight and take this rag doll to his bedroom." As soon as the sound of Blythe's heels disappeared down the hallway and the front door slammed downstairs, Thaddeus woke up. He sprang from the chair like a compressed spring releasing. The expression of contained fury on his face was terrifying. The veins in his neck bulged. "I'm going to kill that woman," he growled, his deep voice vibrating in his chest. "I'm going down there now and ending this with my own hands. She took your sister's money, Elara. She condemned Jovi." Thaddeus took a step toward the door, blind with rage. "No!" Elara sprang up and threw herself in front of him, holding him by the chest with both hands. He was a wall of muscle now, immobile as a rock. "No, Mr. Thaddeus, you cannot. 1 day left, just 1 day. But your sister, I have money in the safe. I will get it now. The money in the safe is evidence. If it is touched, we cannot prove the theft." Elara cried, her tears wetting his shirt, but she held firm, pushing him back. "If you go down there now and hit her, she will call the police. You will be arrested for assault, sent to a mental institution as violent, and she will get everything. And my sister will die without any help because you will be in jail." Thaddeus stopped. He looked into Elara's eyes, his breath heavy and ragged. He saw desperation, but he also saw a love and loyalty he had never received from anyone. "The only way to save Jovi is for you to recover your fortune tomorrow legally," Elara whispered, caressing his face to calm him. "Please, hold on. For me. For Jovi." Thaddeus closed his eyes, fighting against his protective instinct. He snorted, defeated by cold logic, and embraced her. It was a strong, desperate embrace, where he tried to transfer all his strength to her. "I swear, Elara," he whispered into her hair, "tomorrow night that woman will pay for every one of your tears. I will take everything from her, to the last cent." They descended the stairs with extreme caution. Thaddeus pretended to lean on her, but was actually relieving all his weight, floating on the steps so as not to hurt her further. They returned to the cell that was his bedroom. They locked the door. But now they were no longer prisoners awaiting execution. They were entrenched soldiers, awaiting the dawn of the final battle. The next 24 hours were a blur of physical pain and mental endurance. The eve of the day. The sun rose grey. Elara ate nothing. Absolutely nothing. The little stale bread left in her apron pocket from the day before, she crumbled into Thaddeus's mouth, while Blythe shouted orders outside to the decorating team setting up the stage in the garden. "Eat," Elara whispered, her voice weak, her hands trembling as she held the bread. "You need to be strong to sign the papers and then tear them up in her face. You need to have a voice to shout the truth." "And you?" Thaddeus asked, holding her wrist, feeling the thin bones beneath her skin. "Elara, you are going to faint. Your lips are purple. I feed on our victory." She smiled, but the smile did not reach her eyes, which were sunken, surrounded by dark circles. "I can endure." In the middle of the afternoon, while Elara frantically cleaned the silverware for the party, her cell phone vibrated in her hidden pocket. She ran to the service bathroom, locked the door, and answered. It was Mrs. Werner, the neighbor who took care of Jovi. "Elara!" The neighbor's voice was tearful. "Jovi is screaming in pain, my dear. The medicine ran out 3 hours ago. Her fever is rising sharply. Aren't you coming? She is calling for you." Elara slid down the cold tiled wall to the floor, covering her mouth with her hand to stifle a scream of pain that would tear her soul. "Tell her to hold on, Mrs. Werner." Elara sobbed softly, her body curled in a fetal position. "For heaven's sake, tell her I will arrive with the best doctor in the world tomorrow. Just 1 more day. Give her tea. Give her a cold bath. Do not let her die. Please." Outside in the hallway, Thaddeus heard everything. He had dragged himself from the bed to the door, locked from the outside, and pressed his ear to the wood. His hearing, clear of sedatives, caught every muffled sob from Elara in the adjacent bathroom. He lay on the cold floor, motionless, but inside he burned like a volcano. That cleaner was sacrificing her own family for him. The debt he owed her was unpayable with money. It was a blood debt. He clenched his fists until his nails cut into his palm. Blythe will not just lose, he swore to the darkness. She will be destroyed, humiliated, and buried. The party night, the estate transformed. What was a cold luxury mausoleum turned into a Hollywood movie set. Crystal chandeliers were polished until they gleamed. Red carpets were laid out, servers in livery circulated with silver trays and caviar canapes. The press was all there, gossip columnists hungry for rumors, photographers with enormous lenses, high society onlookers. Everyone wanted to see the invalid millionaire and his devoted, saintly fiancée. In the bedroom, Ilara prepared Thaddeus. Blythe had sent a custom-made Italian tuxedo. Ilara dressed him with difficulty, not because he did not help, but because her hands trembled uncontrollably. Her hypoglycemia was at a critical limit. Luminous spots danced in her peripheral vision like fireflies. "You are too pale," Thaddeus said, holding her arms to steady her, preventing her from swaying. He was already dressed, looking like a prince, seated in his wheelchair. "It's the excitement," Ilara joked, her voice coming out as a hoarse, dry whisper. She lovingly adjusted his bow tie. "You look handsome. No one would say you spent 2 years in that hell, Ilara." Thaddeus looked at her seriously, holding her face between his hands. "If you feel like you're going to faint, leave. Don't stay in the room. Go to the kitchen and eat any leftovers." "Don't wait. I will stay," Ilara said stubbornly, her eyes shining with fever. "I want to see her fall. I paid for this ticket with my life. I'm going to watch the end of the show." The door burst open. Blythe entered dazzling in a tight golden dress that seemed made of liquid gold, covered in diamonds. She looked at Thaddeus possessively, like someone looking at a new car. "You actually look presentable," she commented coldly. Then she turned to Ilara with disgust. "And you? What is that?" Ilara looked at her own uniform. "My uniform, ma'am. It's a rag, old, faded, baggy. You look like a beggar." Blythe grimaced. "Perfect. I want everyone to see the contrast. My Christian generosity in keeping incompetent employees and my brilliance. You will serve today, Ilara." "But, ma'am, there are hired servers." Ilara tried to argue. Her legs felt like jelly. Serving required balance, and she could barely stand. "I dismissed one of them on purpose. You will cover the main area where the cameras are. I want you serving the champagne, and I want you to stay close to him." She pointed to Thaddeus. "If he drools, you clean it. If he makes noise, you silence him." "Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." And Ilara, Blythe approached, her expensive cloying perfume invading Ilara's nose. She whispered in the cleaner's ear with a fake smile for anyone watching from afar, "Enjoy the party, because as soon as the last guest leaves, you're out on the street." And she stroked Thaddeus's hair possessively. "He's going to the psychiatric clinic in Switzerland tomorrow morning. The private jet is already booked. Today is the farewell. Enjoy yourselves. The final threat." The deadline was over. It was win or die that night. The party began. Classical music played loudly, drowning out the futile conversations. Thaddeus was pushed to a prominent corner under a spotlight, like a trophy on display. People passed by, looked with pity, commented, "Poor thing, so handsome and so useless," and headed for the bar. Thaddeus remained motionless, head bowed, but his eyes, sharp as razors, swept the hall. He saw Blythe's lawyer, a man with a weasel-like face, talking to a corrupt notary near the dessert table. The document folder was there, and he saw Ilara. She was circulating with a heavy tray of crystal glasses filled to the brim. She was fighting a monumental internal battle. Every step was an effort. Her face was white as paper, covered in a cold sweat. She served the guests, smiling faintly, invisible to those wealthy people. Hang in there, Ilara, Thaddeus thought, transmitting strength with his mind, his leg muscles contracted, ready to explode. Just 10 more minutes. The speech is in 10 minutes. Blythe took the microphone on the small stage set up. The lights dimmed. A spotlight illuminated the villain. "Good evening, everyone," she said, radiant, phony as a $3 bill. "Thank you for coming to celebrate our love and our union. I know many doubted, said it would be difficult for a young woman to care for an invalid husband, but love conquers all, doesn't it?" Polite applause and murmurs of admiration. Thaddeus felt his stomach churn with disgust. Today, we are not just celebrating our official engagement. We are also celebrating Thaddeus's generous decision to transfer the total management of the companies and assets to me, so he can rest and focus on his recovery, away from stress. Blythe smiled at Blythe's lawyer, who raised the triumphant folder. "We will sign the papers here, before all of you, as proof of our transparency." It was time. The moment of truth. But first, a toast, Blythe shouted, excited. She looked at the hall, her predatory eyes searching for the victim. She located Ilara in the back. "Ilara, come here, dear. Bring the special champagne for the engaged couple's toast." All eyes turned to Ilara. She was at the back of the hall, in the shadows. The distance to the stage seemed like miles. The marble floor gleamed, polished and slippery. Ilara took a deep breath. The air would not go in properly. Days of hunger were taking their toll now, with interest and penalties. Her heart skipped beats. Blood buzzed in her ears. "For Jovi, for Thaddeus," she repeated mentally like a mantra. She picked up the silver tray with the tower of full glasses. It weighed a ton. Her arms trembled visibly. She began to walk, one step, another. The silence in the hall was one of expectation. The music stopped. Only Ilara's dragging footsteps could be heard. Thaddeus, from his corner, gripped the arms of the wheelchair so hard that the leather cracked loudly. He was ready to jump, but he needed to wait for the signing. Ilara approached the stage. Blythe descended the steps to meet Ilara in the middle of the ring, smiling for the cameras. "Here, ma'am," Ilara whispered, extending the tray, her arms burning with pain. Blythe smiled at the cameras that fired blinding flashes. She looked at Thaddeus in the back and winked, a warning. "Look what I do to those you love." And then, with a quick, calculated and cruel movement, Blythe stretched out her right foot, clad in a pointed-toe stiletto. She tripped Ilara. It was a subtle but deadly movement. Ilara, already dizzy, without reflexes, stumbled over the villain's foot. Time slowed down. Thaddeus saw everything in slow motion. Blythe's foot. Ilara's body leaning forward, the terror in her eyes. The tray flew from Ilara's hands. The crystal glasses, extremely expensive, floated in the air, spinning, catching the light from the chandeliers for a second before crashing against the marble floor. Crash! The sound of breaking glass was deafening, like an explosion. Champagne splattered everywhere, a golden, sticky rain, wetting the hem of Blythe's dress and soaking Ilara's uniform. Ilara completely lost her balance. She fell to her knees and hands onto the shards. A large piece of glass tore her palm. Bright red blood instantly welled up, mixing with the champagne on the white floor, creating a macabre puddle. The ballroom let out a collective gasp of shock. Ilara tried to get up, but the pain from the cut and the dizziness from hunger pinned her to the floor. The world spun too fast, a carousel of lights and distorted faces. Blythe looked down, putting on a theatrical face of horror for the cameras, and then one of genuine fury at Ilara. "You incompetent fool!" Blythe screamed, the microphone still in her hand, amplifying her shrill voice for the entire estate and the garden. "Look what you've done! You've ruined my moment! Drunk! You're drunk, aren't you? Stealing my drink!" Blythe kicked Ilara's leg, a real, strong, painful kick to her thin thigh. Get out of here. Get out of my sight before I have the security guards throw you in the trash. You're trash. Ilara looked up, blood dripping from her hand. Her vision was darkening, a black tunnel closing in. She saw Blythe's distorted face. She saw the camera flashes blinding her, and deep down, through the fog of fainting, she saw Thaddeus. He was no longer sitting. The last thing Ilara saw before collapsing from hunger and exhaustion, hitting her face on the cold floor, was the empty wheelchair, spinning slightly from the momentum. And then everything went dark. The ballroom was plunged into a stunning silence, thick as fog, broken only by the electric hum of camera flashes that continued to fire in bursts, recording Ilara's fallen body among the crystal shards and spilled champagne. Blythe, with the hem of her golden dress stained by the sticky drink, looked at the unconscious housekeeper with a mix of absolute disgust and sadistic triumph. "Someone get this trash out of here!" Blythe screamed again, her shrill, off-key voice echoing through the cold marble walls. "Security guards! Where are the incompetent security guards I pay? Throw this drunkard out on the street right now!" Two burly security guards in black suits began to advance toward Ilara, their heavy boots clicking on the floor, ready to drag her out as if she were a run-over animal. It was at that exact moment, as the hand of one of the guards was about to touch Ilara's inert arm, that the sound occurred. It was not a scream. It was not an explosion. It was something more terrifying for anyone who knew the routine of that house. It was the mechanical, metallic, and violent sound of a wheelchair being shoved backward with brute force. Creak! Bam! The sound cut through the ballroom like thunder. Blythe stopped with her mouth open. The guests froze with their glasses in the air. The security guards froze. All 200 pairs of eyes simultaneously turned to the corner of the stage, under the spotlight, where the invalid should have been. The wheelchair was there, empty. The wheels spun in the air. Such was the force of the impulse that launched it against the wall. And before it, rising like a vengeful tower, stood Thaddeus. He was not just standing, he seemed to be growing before everyone's eyes. His broad shoulders, previously hunched in the posture of a defeated invalid, were now open, straining the seams of the expensive tuxedo. His head, previously bowed and weak, was held high, his chin locked in an expression of biblical fury. The vein in his temple visibly pulsed. He seemed 10 feet tall at that moment. A collective gasp swept through the ballroom, sucking the air from the room. Someone dropped a wine glass. The sound of breaking glass was the only noise that dared to compete with his presence. Blythe turned slowly, as in a horror movie, her mocking smile dying on her trembling lips, replaced by a mask of absolute dread. Colour drained from her face, leaving her pale as a corpse beneath her heavy makeup. "Thaddeus," she whispered, her voice failing, her legs trembling inside the haute couture dress. You. Thaddeus did not answer. He took the first step. Thud. The leather shoe hit the marble with a heavy, firm and deliberate sound. It was not the shuffling step of someone relearning to walk in physical therapy. It was the step of a predator cornering its prey. Thud. Thud. He descended from the small platform where they had placed him as an exhibit. Each step was a death sentence for Blythe's charade. The crowd automatically parted, recoiling with instinctive fear from the overwhelming energy that emanated from him. He walked in a straight line, ignoring everyone, his eyes fixed on Blythe like a lion. "Do not touch her." Thaddeus's voice thundered through the ballroom. It was the first time many there had heard his voice in 2 years. It was not a weak, medicated whisper. It was a grave, deep, vibrant command that made the security guards immediately retreat, raising their hands in surrender, terrified. Thaddeus reached where Ilara lay fallen. He paused for a second, looking at her fragile body, huddled among the shards. He saw the blood on her cut hand mixed with the champagne. He saw the deathly pallor of her face, a result of the hunger he should have felt. A tear of pure hatred and pain ran down his face. He raised his eyes to Blythe. She was 6 feet from him, paralyzed, leaning against the monumental 5-tier cake table, covered in white whipped cream and golden arabesques. "Thaddeus, my love." Blythe tried, her voice trembling, high-pitched, raising her hands, desperately trying to play the part for the cameras. "It's a miracle. You stood up. Thank God, I prayed so much for this. Thaddeus closed the distance in the blink of an eye, with terrifying speed. He grabbed Blythe's wrist, her hand full of diamond rings. He squeezed, not gently, but with the crushing strength he had accumulated in months of silent exercises in the darkness of his prison room. "Ow! Thaddeus, you're hurting me," Blythe shrieked, the real pain breaking her act, trying to break free from his iron grip. "Hurting?" Thaddeus asked, his voice low, dangerously calm, audible to all the journalists who now formed a tight circle around them, recording every second. "Do you want to talk about pain, Blythe? Do you want to talk about hunger? What are you talking about? Let go, you're crazy. It's the trauma from the accident," she yelled at the cameras, her eyes wide, seeking support. "He's having a psychotic episode. Security guards, hold him. He's going to kill me." No one moved. Thaddeus's authority was absolute. The hall was mesmerized. "I spent 2 years trapped in my own body," Thaddeus said, every word laden with venom and truth. "Listening to you laugh on the phone, feeling you pinch me until I was bruised, feeling the needle of the sedatives you injected into me to keep me quiet while you stole every dollar from my company." A murmur of shock and horror ran through the crowd. Flashes fired faster, blinding the villain. Blythe's lawyer in the corner began to try to sneak out towards the side door, breaking into a cold sweat. But Thaddeus pointed at him with his free hand without letting go of Blythe. "No one leaves," he roared, and his voice made the chandeliers vibrate. "The police are already at the door. I sent the safe's evidence, the embezzlement dossier, and the toxicology reports to the sheriff 10 minutes ago via the cell phone Ilara hid for me." Blythe's eyes widened. Her world collapsed. "The safe. You, that filthy rat." Blythe looked at Ilara on the floor with deadly hatred, forgetting the cameras. "I should have killed her." "You tried," Thaddeus said, his eyes flashing. "You tried to kill both of us. Me, with starvation and drugs, and her. You took everything from her. Her salary, her dignity, her food." Thaddeus released Blythe's wrist with a sudden shove. She stumbled backward, her high heels losing stability on the champagne-slicked floor. "You wanted to shine, Blythe?" Thaddeus took a step forward, cornering her against the main table, where the giant cake rose like a tower. "You wanted to be the center of attention? You wanted everyone to look at you tonight? Thaddeus, don't do this. The press, my reputation." Blythe pleaded, seeing the righteous fury in his eyes. "The press will love this," Thaddeus said, and then he pushed her. It wasn't a slap. It was a firm, deliberate push, with his open palm on her chest, a gesture of total rejection, of someone expelling something rotten and evil from their life forever. Blythe lost her balance. She flailed her arms frantically, trying to hold on to something, but only found air. She fell backwards, screaming. Splash! The sound was muffled, wet, and grotesque. Blythe landed on her back exactly in the middle of the 5-tier engagement cake. The structure collapsed on her. Whipped cream, sponge cake, apricot filling, and pounds of fondant exploded everywhere. The villain sank into the mountain of sugar. The golden dress worth thousands of dollars disappeared under a thick, ridiculous layer of white cream. The silence of the hall was broken by the frantic sound of flashes. Click, 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 click. It was a storm of light. The image of the perfect, untouchable socialite, now looking like a sugary swamp monster, struggling to get up, slipping on her own cake, was the ultimate humiliation, immortalized in high definition. "Ah!" Blythe screamed, wiping whipped cream from her eyes, spitting cake, coughing. "You bastard, I'll sue you, I'll destroy you." In the distance, the sound of sirens began to grow, approaching the estate. Thaddeus didn't even look at her. To him, she had ceased to exist. His focus shifted instantly. The fury disappeared, giving way to desperate concern. He turned to Ilara. He knelt on the champagne-soaked, glass-shard-strewn floor, not caring about tearing or dirtying his tuxedo pants. With infinite tenderness, he slipped one arm under Ilara's knees and the other across her back, feeling every bone in her spine. He lifted her. Ilara was light, too light, the weight of a wounded bird. But Thaddeus trembled. His arms, still regaining full strength after years of partial atrophy, shook with the effort. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The veins in his neck bulged. But he did not falter. He held her tight, nestling her head against his chest, protecting her from the world. He stood up with her in his arms, breathing with difficulty, feeling the weight of the sacrifice she had made for him. He turned to the cameras, to the society watching open-mouthed, judging them. "You are taking pictures of the wrong woman," Thaddeus said, his voice choked, tears streaming down his masculine face. He looked at Ilara in his arms, wiping a little blood from her hand with his own silk handkerchief from his pocket. "This woman here," he began, and his voice trembled with emotion. "Her name is Ilara. She is a maid. You didn't even look at her when she was serving champagne. You ignored her as if she were furniture. Blythe humiliated her in front of all of you, and no one did anything." Thaddeus looked up, staring defiantly into the TV camera's lenses. "But this woman shared her food with me. She earned minimum wage, and even then, she would take food out of her own mouth to feed me, because that one there—" He gestured with his head towards Blythe, who was trying to get up, slipping ridiculously on the frosting, pathetic. "That one there locked me on a starvation diet, so I would die before reporting her." A murmur of horror and shame swept through the hall. Some socialites put their hands to their mouths. "Ilara fainted today not because she's drunk," Thaddeus continued, shouting for everyone to hear. "She fainted from hunger. She hasn't eaten in 2 days. She saved every cent to buy medicine for her sick sister and gave every grain of rice from her lunchbox so I would have the strength to get out of this chair today." Thaddeus pulled Ilara close, kissing the top of her head. "She saved me. She carried me when I couldn't walk, and now—" He looked at everyone. "Now I will carry her, for the rest of my life, and woe to anyone who touches a hair on her head." The double doors of the hall burst open. Thaddeus's honest lawyer entered, followed by a sheriff and 4 armed officers. "Arrest that woman," Thaddeus ordered, pointing at the cake-covered figure. "Attempted aggravated murder, unlawful imprisonment, embezzlement, identity fraud, and mistreatment. The original evidence is in my pocket, and the digital copy is already in your email, Sheriff." Blythe began to scream hysterically as the officers handcuffed her, without any gentleness. Whipped cream flew as she struggled, dirtying their uniforms. "I own all of this. You don't know who you're dealing with. Get your hands off me. I am Blythe." "Ma'am, you are under arrest," the sheriff said impassively, pushing her. As the villain was dragged out, pathetic, dirty, and destroyed, Thaddeus walked towards the opposite exit, carrying Ilara. The paramedics who had arrived with the police ran to him with the stretcher. "Here!" Thaddeus called, his voice failing from exhaustion now that the adrenaline was subsiding. "She needs glucose now. She is in severe hypoglycemic shock." They carefully placed Ilara on the stretcher. Thaddeus did not let go of her hand as they injected the IV drip into her thin arm. Ilara's eyes fluttered. She slowly opened her eyelids, confused by the ambulance's rotating lights and the noise. The first thing she saw was Thaddeus's face, leaning over her, crying and smiling at the same time, sweat dripping from his face. "Mr. Thaddeus," she whispered, her voice almost inaudible, dry. "You got up?" "I got up, my angel." Thaddeus kissed her injured and bandaged hand. "I got up. It's over. The witch is gone. You won." "And my sister?" was her only concern, even on the verge of collapse. "The ambulance is already at her place too," Thaddeus assured, caressing her face with adoration. "The best doctor in town is going there personally this minute. She will be fine. Everyone will be fine now. Rest." Ilara let out a deep sigh, her body relaxing on the stretcher, finally surrendering to rest. A faint but true smile lit up her face before her eyes closed. "We made it," she murmured. And Thaddeus, watching her sleep, knew that was the most important moment of his life. 1 month later, the garden of the estate was unrecognizable. Where before there had been cold, symmetrical orchids and pretentious statues placed by Blythe, now there were sunflowers, daisies, and a lush green lawn where children ran. It was the birthday of the niece of one of the new staff. The house had life, it had color, it smelled of homemade cake baking. On the sunny veranda, a breakfast table was set. There was no excessive luxury, but there was an obscene abundance of good food. Warm breads, cornmeal cakes, fresh fruits, juices of all colors. Ilara came out of the house. She no longer wore a grey uniform. She wore a light sky-blue cotton dress, which enhanced the rosy color that had returned to her face. She had gained weight. Her cheeks were flushed, healthy, radiant. Her hand, already scarred with only a thin white line on her palm, held a tray with fresh coffee, purely out of habit of serving. "Ilara!" Thaddeus appeared at the kitchen door. He wore jeans and a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, looking 10 years younger and free. He walked perfectly, although he still did intensive physical therapy to regain full strength in his legs and erase the after-effects of immobility. He ran to her, feigning seriousness, and gently took the tray from her hands. "How many times do I have to tell you?" he scolded, smiling. "You don't serve anyone in this house anymore. You are the lady of the house. Sit." "It's force of habit, Thaddeus," she laughed. The sound of her laughter was his favorite music now. "And I like taking care of you. You still need to gain mass. I'm the one who has to take care of you." He placed the tray on the table and held her hands, kissing the scar on her palm. "Speaking of which, Jovi called. She said her physical therapy is great. She's already walking around the house without crutches. Thanks to you." Ilara looked at him with infinite gratitude, her eyes welling up. "You saved her life. You paid for everything." "No." Thaddeus became serious. He leaned closer, looking deep into her eyes. "You saved her life, and mine. You saved us with your courage and your packed lunch. I just paid the bill with money, which is easy. The miracle was you." He put his hand in his pocket. Ilara's heart pounded. Thaddeus knelt on the grass. Not because he had fallen. Not because his legs failed. He knelt because he wanted to, with full control. He bent his knee to the ground, humble and in love. He took out a small blue velvet box. It was not a giant, vulgar diamond ring like the one Blythe demanded to appear in magazines. It was a delicate antique gold ring with a deep green emerald, exactly the color of Ilara's eyes. "Ilara," Thaddeus began, his voice choked with emotion. "When I was in that chair, invisible to the world, you saw me. When I was hungry and everyone denied me bread, you fed me. When I had no hope, you gave me your life force." Ilara covered her mouth with her hands, happy tears streaming down. "I don't want a trophy wife. I don't want a woman who loves my bank account or my status. I want the woman who shared a rice and beans lunchbox with me in the dark, when I had nothing to offer but danger." Thaddeus opened the small box. "Ilara, will you marry me? Will you walk by my side now that I can walk for the rest of our lives?" Ilara fell to her knees in front of him, hugging his neck, smelling his soap and freedom. "Yes, 1,000 times yes," she cried on his shoulder. Thaddeus hugged her tight, lifting her off the ground, spinning her in the air under the sunlight. Far from there, in a cold, damp, grey cell of a maximum security women's penitentiary, Blythe looked at a plastic tray on the floor. The meal was a thin, tasteless soup. She was without makeup, aged, alone, forgotten by the world she had tried so hard to impress. The wheels of justice grind slow but fine, and the taste of Ilara and Thaddeus's victory was sweeter and more nourishing than any engagement cake. So what did you think of this explosive ending? Do you think Blythe's punishment in prison, eating thin soup, was fair, or did she deserve to suffer more? And the marriage proposal with the simple ring. Do you prefer gold and emerald or a giant diamond? Tell me everything in the comments. If you cried with Ilara, leave a green heart. Until the next story.